Hi, I'm going to talk about my software transitions and how it works because it is a really important part of my creative practice and shapes all the things that I produce with it and even the things that I produce without it. These ideas are like really heavily indebted to Hal Galper, Miles Okazaki, and George Garzone. But so Garzone has this saying, the random triadic chromatic concept, which is you take any given triad, you play broken arpeggio with it in a coherent rhythm, and then you move up or down a half step from the last thing that you played, and then you play another triad of which that half step motion is like part of it, right? So if you say, I'm going to play a C major triad and just ascend, and you end on the G, and then you move a half step up or down. Let's say you go down, so you're playing the F sharp, and then you'll play, I don't know, maybe like an F sharp minor triad in first inversion, right? And then you play that, and then wherever you land, move up or down a half step. Importantly, the note that you land on when you move up or down a half step doesn't have to be the root, right? So for any given combination, you have like quite a few possibilities from where you move out. And Garzone himself talks about how challenging this is to execute, even as the man who came up with the idea and who practices it relentlessly. This is a thing that is like very complicated for humans to do because it requires some amount of stochasticity to actually explore the action space instead of just playing the same Garzone-esque licks over and over again, right? But it's actually very easy for computers to do. And so my idea was to take a system like Garzone's system, but a little bit more expansive, and then create a performance interface for it so that anyone with a strong rhythmic sensibility and a basic understanding, very basic understanding of how the software works can like produce beautiful chromatic music, or music with a lot of unpredictable harmonic variation, even if it's not quite chromatic. So here we have our four triads, right? Diminished, minor, major, augmented, and then what I really like is dealing in 5-note pitch collections. So, how do I turn these four qualities into 5-note collections that are useful? So the first step, and this comes from Hal Galper, to turn them into tetrads is to just add any given number to that's not already in the list to each of the lists, right? So for the diminished, you can do 0, 1, 3, 6, 0, 2, 3, 6, 0, 3, 4, 6, 0, 3, 5, 6, 0, 3, 6, 7, 0, 3, 6, 8, 0, 3, 6, 9, 0, 3, 6, 10, 0, 3, 6, 11, right? And you do this for each of them, so you end up with 9 for each, or 36 total when you remove all the duplicates and rotational equivalents. An example of a duplicate is 0347. It's in both of them. Rotational equivalents are pretty easy to find, especially in the augmented, where like 0148 and 0458 are rotationally equivalent of one another, right? It's to base 12 systems, you just rotate them. You end up with 21 of these tetrads, and I've got a big table to 21 tetrads. And so we have 21 tetrads. That's cool, but we want 5 notes. So how do we get to 5? To get to 5, you find the largest uninterrupted interval within the tetrad, and then you interrupt it in a very specific way. So an example case here, let's use 0347. The largest interval here is the 4th between, let's call it a G, the 7, and C, the 0. Because remember, these are just notes floating in space. We're not really worried about how they happen to be rotated in the way that we're writing them down. We're thinking this is just expanded up all the octaves, et cetera, right? So there's really like an invisible 12 here, as well as an invisible 15, 16, 19, 24, 27, 28, 31. So that's the largest interval. Now, we don't want too many half steps because in electronic music, being able to use delays in creative ways is, at least for what I do, pretty important and has just a ton of possibilities baked into it. We don't want to preclude those just by having pitch collections that contain things like 2 consecutive half steps, right? Like C, C sharp, D. You play that through a delay and it severely limits your options. and usually won't sound great. So how do we get from any one of these pentatonic scales into any of the other pentatonic scales in like a way that is operationalizable as like a piece of code or as like a performance paradigm or something like that? And the way you do this is pretty intuitive, I think. You use the tetrads as bridges between pentatonic scales, right? So the software stores the last three values played. So like, let's say the last three values you played were 7, 7, 9, and 11. Then it's going to complete this as a tetrad, right? And because we have like a fragment of a tetrad in here, right? In that major third. Between the 7 and the 11, we know that that the potential sort of pivot points are going to be a minor third or a third below the 7 or a third above the 11, right? And those can be minor or major thirds. So that's 3, 4, 2, or 3 from the 11. So 3, 4, or 2. Let's say it's 4. So then the tetrad is 4, 7, 9, and 11. And then it's going to find us a new pentad that contains the 4, right? As well as the previous two notes preceding it, right? So in this way you get enough commonality between them for it to make sense. You get a really strong melodic part leading into the thing because of the strength of triads as a thing to build your melodies around, but not totally deterministic as if you were like only ever shifting in minor and major thirds, right? So an example, so maybe the pitch collection we started at was like 0, 6, 7, 9, 11. The last three notes we played were 7, 9, and 11. The tetrad associated with this is 7, 9, 11, 4. So then a 4 sounds, and then we move into a pitch collection that's like 2, 4, 8, 9, 11. Totally feasible. And you can just chain these types of motions together indefinitely and get, I think, quite compelling results. I really like thinking about music this way. I really like playing music this way. I really like building tools that help other people to play music in this way. So then there's this other question of like bass notes, because often it's the case that like you're really drawing from a different bag of notes in the upper part of a composition from the lower part of the composition, right? And Barry Harris has a formula for this, the 6th on the 5th formula, where for any given chord quality, you actually sound a chord that is either a major 6 or a minor 6, and either a minor third or a perfect 5th above the root listed on the lead sheet. And that insight for me, or the main thing that I shook out of this was like, wow, for any given pitch collection, if you just take it and then create a new pitch collection that's the whole thing shifted down by a 5th, and a new pitch collection that's the whole thing shifted down by a minor third, and then you take the superset of those three collections and then eliminate undesirable notes, you get fun, interesting bass stuff that does more complex harmony than is generally available within a pentatonic framework. And this is neat. More complex vertically speaking, and by implication horizontally speaking, but just interesting colors, right? Qualities. So let's use this 2, 4, 8, 9, and 11 and find like what the bass pitch collection might look like, and delete some of this other scratch stuff. Okay. So we want to find this shifted down by a minor third. Remember, it's a mod 12 system, so 2 minus 3 is 11. So it's 11, 1, 5, 6, and 8. And then the same thing, but minus 7, which is plus 5, right? Same thing, mod 12. So that's 7, 9, 1, 2, and 4. So then the superset of these three collections, right, looks like 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 11, and then we want to remove anything undesirable, which for me right now, I'm like flat nines, don't love a flat 9 relationship between a bass and the top line, so we're going to remove the possibility of a flat 9 by taking anything in this collection -1 out of this list. So 2, 4, 8, 9, 11, the things to remove are 1, 3, 7, 8, and 10. So we take out the 1, we take out the 7, there is no 3, there is no 8, there is no 10. So you end up with this more diverse pitch collection on the bottom. So your melody looks like this, or your melody collection looks like this, and your bass collection looks like this. And this, has a lot of fun results. And this is how I've organized this information into a playable interface, which is you have 3 sections. You have your bass section, your melody section, and your transition sections. Melody notes repeat every 5 spaces, right? Because they're pentatonic collections. So it's those are your octaves. This 3 wide thing isn't arbitrary. It's actually to ensure that whenever you play a note adjacent to a previous note, it is always less than an octave away, right? Which helps you keep your melodies coherent. And then whenever you want to transition, you hit one of these buttons. And if it's in the left column, it'll play a note below the last one you played. And if it's in the right column, it'll play a note above the last one you played. And this is good for melodic coherence when executing a harmonic shift, which is pretty important. So to demonstrate that, it's like... So we're changing spaces as we go up. Also, whenever you execute a transition, these 2 buttons light, which arms the bass and the accompaniment track, meaning you'll get a note there where you otherwise wouldn't, which helps enforce the harmonic change and also, create more of a rhythmic sense to the harmonic motion. There's also this button. The way this works is if your bass probability is not 0, so I'll turn up the bass probability, and I'll turn the melody probability to 0, then you have some number of steps after which the bass will actually trigger, right? And that increases here, that's settable within the script via param. It's set, I think, to 8 right now. So I get a bass note every 8, or a chance of a bass note every 8. But if you have it set to less than the max, then when it triggers, it actually doesn't reset the count fully. It resets the count to match where it would have been had any skipped notes actually been played. And this way, it's rhythmically coherent, so... with variation, right? Yep. That's that section. And then I also have these 3 buttons over here, and these are just the probabilities, right? So melody probability, if I set that all the way up, and set comp probability, and set bass probability all the way up, then we're playing chords every time. Thanks.